Sunday, June 26, 2022, the 13th Sunday of Ordinary Time. Jesus was starting a pilgrimage to Jerusalem. A pilgrimage is a journey to meet God, and on the journey, one meets one's real self. Here, the journey is as important as the destination. I remember a pilgrimage we made on foot during my early years of priestly formation to the tomb of St. Alfonso. It was about 25 kilometers. We were about 30 years old. Some could not make it. Their minds were willing, but the body could not take the hardship. For some others, the body was strong, but the mind did not have the resolve. In that journey, one could discern the strength of the body and the spirit at the same time. In fact, every pilgrimage requires the same act of discernment from the pilgrim. I am reminded of that beautiful poem, "To Be a Pilgrim," by John Bunyan. He explains the resolve of the pilgrim who would not be stopped by discouragement, by opposition, or by fear. Usually, there is a guide for these pilgrimages, and here, Jesus himself is the guide. He had done this pilgrimage before with his parents and relatives, but this time around, it is a different pilgrimage. This is a pilgrimage of no return. So, Jesus recruited his team carefully. Some were eager to join him, but he refused them. Some who were reluctant, he encouraged. I used to ask this question: why did he refuse some who wanted to join? I can only arrive at one answer. Jesus chose only those who would make it with him, at least until Jerusalem. He was reminding them that there was no surety of getting a place to sleep. Jerusalem would be the place of his crucifixion or glorification. For Jesus, this was the way to glorify his Father. A curious event happened at the start of this journey: the rejection in the Samaritan towns. Jesus had sent disciples ahead of him to prepare. He was traveling with many people, so they had to prepare places for eating and sleeping in advance. Kind of like how we make hotel and dinner reservations today. The disciples came back disappointed because the Samaritans did not welcome Jesus and his group. The disciples felt rejected, disappointed, and angry. These events took place immediately after they had helped Jesus feed the 5,000 and after the Transfiguration. They knew that Jesus had a lot of power at his disposal, and it would not be difficult for him to bring fire down from heaven. We cannot help but recall the beginning of the second book of Kings, where the prophet Elijah calls down fire to kill the servants of Ahaziah. The disciples were expecting that same fire from Jesus. Thinking he was without his wits, the sons of thunder, James and John, suggested to Jesus that he should bring down this fire. By the time of this final journey, the disciples had been with Jesus for over 2 years. They had certainly heard from Jesus about loving one's enemies. And here, they were suddenly enraged and ready to destroy because they felt rejected. Forget about loving your enemy. They were ready to kill them. Some disciples. Rejection, subsequent anger, and power make a dangerous cocktail for destructive behaviors. The greater the access to power, the greater the destruction will be. The anger of the disciples gives a clue to the psyche of a rejected person. A person who has no access to power falls into sadness and grief upon being rejected. A sense of worthlessness is the first feeling of rejection. Then self-confidence vanishes. A person who has power at his disposal seeks to annihilate the people who reject him. The request of John and James represents this state of mind, They want to prove that they are strong, powerful, and have resources. The result of this attitude is destructive behavior. A recent criminal case of a serial killer woman who committed 6 homicides of her husband's family sheds light into the mind of a person who has not recovered from rejection. She poisoned the 6 people in a decade's time. Imagine how long she harbored that anger in herself. The one who feels rejected is in a general unhealthy state of mind and is quite vulnerable. In a healthy state of mind, one respects the freedom of the other person. Jesus rebukes the wounded egos of the sons of Zebedee. He knows too well that those who are walking with him are sick. The same tendency would follow them even to the Garden of Gethsemane. Peter takes out his sword to protect, and Jesus asks him to put his weapon back into its scabbard. It was not because Jesus was unable to call heaven's power to defend him. Rather, he was convinced of his mission on earth, and his powers were not to be used for destruction and for self-defense. It is important to make a pilgrimage into one's own heart. It is good to learn from the Master the art of handling rejection and the spirit of forgiveness.